Holding your camera well when you're taking a photo is different than holding your phone when you're taking a photo. The reason it's important to hold your camera well when you're taking a photo is it reduces the risk of getting blurry photos. Once you've formed a good habit of holding your camera well, you'll be more comfortable working with it too. Taking photos with your phone, you're probably used to holding it between your forefingers and thumbs or cradling it in the palm of your hand. The best way to hold a camera is with your thumb on the back of the camera body and your right finger resting lightly on the shutter release button. Then place your left hand under the camera body and the lens if you've got a bigger lens on. This will help you stabilize your camera and take the weight of the camera in your left hand so that you're freer to move your finger and thumb to control the dials and buttons. Keep your elbows tucked into your sides. This is more stable than having them spread out like wings. And don't hold your camera too tight, just firmly enough to be in control of it. This is the best way to take horizontally oriented photos. When you want to take a vertical photo, turn your camera so that your right hand is on the bottom of the camera and your fingers still resting on the shutter release button, and your left hand is under the camera body and lens. Turning it so that your right hand on top is not nearly as stable. A lot of people do this, but I find it's quite uncomfortable and much less stable than if you angle your camera so that the shutter release button is low and your finger's still on it. This way you can keep your elbows tucked in nice and comfortably to your sides. When you're taking photos in a standing position, spread your feet so that they're about the same width apart as your shoulders and one foot slightly in front of the other. And relax. This will help keep you stable too. Holding your camera well means holding it still. This is particularly important when you're using a slow shutter speed. If you move and your camera moves when you're taking a photo, especially when you're using a slow shutter speed, this can cause your whole photo to be blurred. I'll cover more about shutter speeds in lessons 12 and 27 in this course. When you do have to use a slow shutter speed and you're holding your camera, find something to lean against, like a wall or a lamppost. This will help stabilize your camera. Finding a firm surface that you can rest your elbows on can help as well, or you can use a tripod. Crouching or kneeling down can sometimes help you get a more interesting perspective for the photos you want to take. Think about how stable you are when you want to get low to the ground. Placing one knee on the ground with your other foot flat on the ground, you can rest your elbow on your knee, and this will help stabilize your camera too. Using your camera's viewfinder is a big change from using your phone when you're taking photos. Using your viewfinder can also help keep your camera more steady than holding it out in front of you and using the monitor to compose your photos. There are more practical reasons for using your viewfinder to take photos, and I'll cover these in the next lesson. Also, be aware of your breathing when you're taking photos. If you've just completed a hike or climbed 1,000 steps to a mountaintop temple, or if it's cold and you're shivering, you run the risk of moving your camera as you're taking photos. Again, this is more critical when you're having to use a slow shutter speed. So in these situations, as you come to take a photo, just take a deep breath and exhale and relax, and then take your photo. Everybody differs in how steadily they can hold a camera. I find that I can get down to about a 1/30th of a second shutter speed without the risk of camera shake. And if I want to use speed slower than this and I don't have a tripod, I'll find somewhere to lean against or rest my elbows on, and then I can get down generally to about 1/8 of a second. Slower than this, I need to use a tripod. Image stabilization in modern cameras makes it easier to handhold your camera at slow shutter speeds. Some cameras you can handhold safely down to about 2 seconds or even more and still get a sharp image. Learning to hold your camera well will help you take better photos because it reduces the risk of camera shake when you're using slow shutter speeds. And you'll be more comfortable holding your camera when you hold it properly. Lesson 1, practical exercise, the best way to hold your camera. This exercise will help you to build a good habit of holding your camera well. It will help you to be more comfortable and take sharper photos, especially when you're using slower shutter speeds. Set your camera to shutter priority mode. This is usually indicated by an S or TV on the dial. In this mode, you control the shutter speed and the camera manages the other controls so that you get well exposed photos. Adjust your shutter speed to 1/250th of a second and take a photo of a static subject. I'm going to photograph this cactus. Now, adjust your shutter speed down to 1/25th of a second and take another photograph. At 1/25th of a second, your shutter speed is open for twice as long as it was at 1/250th of a second. Now adjust your shutter speed down to 1/60th of a second and then keep halving it and taking a photo each time. So 1/60th and then 1/30th, 1/15th, an eighth, a quarter, half a second, 1 second, and even longer if you know your camera's got good image stabilization. And as you're doing this, listen to the shutter. Can you hear it getting slower as you slow it down? This is now a quarter of a second. And half a second. And 1 second. And even 2 seconds. Now set your shutter speed back to 1/250th of a second and repeat this exercise going through the shutter speeds while you're leaning against a wall or you've got your elbows resting on something to help stabilize your camera. And then reset your shutter speed again to 1/250th of a second and do the same again, but this time photograph a moving subject. Think about how you're holding your camera each time. And as you practice these techniques, your photography will improve. Open the photos on your computer and compare the differences between them. Look to see if the photos are clear and sharp or if they're blurry. What are the slowest shutter speeds you could use for each set of photos where the photos remain sharp? This is the slowest shutter speed that you can handhold your camera at. Any slower than that, you'll need to put your camera on a tripod. For each of the exercises in this course, I want you to take some photos with your phone as well. This will help you see the differences between using your phone and using your camera to take pictures. It's also a good idea to take notes about what you're doing and what your camera settings are when you're doing these exercises. Each time you complete an exercise and review your photos, save 2 or 3 of your best ones to a favorites folder. This way you'll be able to see how well you're progressing. The main points from this lesson are: holding your camera well helps you avoid blurry photos. Hold your camera firmly but not too tight. Remember what the slowest shutter speed is you can use. Practice this to improve your photography. Think about how you're holding your camera each time you take a photo.